and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. Now, friends, I get this question a lot from you guys, and so we had to go out and find the exact right person that could simplify it for us. Bottom line is, when you're a small business owner or freelancer, you are doing all the things, right? And so at some point, the tipping scale happens and you need to grow a team. So how do you do that? Well, my guest today is Kelly Roach, and she is known as the Business Catalyst, helping elite business owners become game changers in their field and achieve $1 million plus breakthroughs in their business. As a former Fortune 500 executive who's built and led record-breaking teams in 17 locations across the U.S., I figure Kelly knows a thing or two of working with great, unstoppable teams. She's been featured on ABC, NBC, The Good Day, Inc., Forbes magazine, and of course, she is the host of her podcast, Unstoppable Success Radio. I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast today, Kelly Roach. Hey, Kelly.
Hello, and thank you. What an amazing introduction. Thank you so much for that. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we are thrilled to have you here as well. As you can remember, maybe a couple of months ago, Anna Lundberg was on the Simplifiers podcast, and she recommended you. She said, oh my gosh, you need to meet my business coach. She is incredible. She's doing amazing things. She's written this book all about how to build an unstoppable team. And I thought, aha, this is the topic I'd like to simplify next. So in your writings and in your website, and really a lot of what you do talks about this bigger than you mentality. Can you break that down for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the quote, was it Anne Frank who said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much.
Yes.
And that is business at its heart and at its core. You're one person, you have limited time, and you can't possibly fulfill your potential unless you list the help of other people to bring your big dream into fruition. And so, to me, building a team isn't something that you do when you become successful. It's something that you do to become successful. And that's the whole principle of what I teach in Bigger Than You.
Well, and I think that that's it. Like, each person that's listening to this podcast right now, you have specific strengths and talents that are very true to you, but that can only take you so far, right?
Yes.
And
exactly.
I think also a mistake that people make, and I'm curious if you see this as well, is when they're just starting out and they're like, right, I just need to clone myself, so I need to find 5 more of me to do the work. Right. And the truth is, you don't want to find clones. You want to find complementary people with different skill sets, right? Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, I want to go back to one thing that you said earlier really quick, because I thought that was really powerful. You said, in the beginning, you're doing all the things, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so true. But unfortunately, we all have personality types and we all have skill sets, things that we're good at and things that we're not. 95% of what needs to get done in order to make your business successful, you are not the best person to be doing.
Yes.
So to think about that from the opposite perspective, if you're doing that 95% of things that you really shouldn't be doing, chances are your business is probably going to be struggling quite a bit because you don't have the best person for the job doing the job in the first place. To answer your question about hiring people that complement you, that is absolutely the most important thing. You've got to figure out what is your zone of genius and what are the things that you and absolutely only you can do in your business. Mm-hmm. And they're few and far between. Yeah. Most of the time, the confusion I see with business owners is they assess a lot of things as being things that only they can do, but it has nothing to do with that. It's because they're disorganized or because they don't have the systems in place to support other people doing them. It's not because they actually are the only person that can do them. So if you're willing to take a retreat day where you go to the coffee shop, you shut off, all the social media, you shut down your email, and you document your systems, chances are the vast majority of stuff that you've been stuck thinking that you have to be the one doing, someone can do a lot faster, easier, cheaper, and probably better than you can.
Yeah, that's the truth. And, documentation for most people, I think they don't even think of doing that in the first couple of years because they're like, well, it's just me, myself, and I, Kelly. Like, I don't need to make a handbook for myself, right? But that's the trick is that when you're ready to scale, you got to have the handbook in place. Or it's going to be, you're going to hire the wrong person, you're going to hire the wrong skill set, or once you've hired them, you don't have anything to train them on. So like, okay, what do I do? Well, you've got to pull it all from my brain.
Exactly. And it's so funny that you brought that up because I literally recorded a piece this morning talking about one of the biggest, most costly mistakes that I see business owners making is that they wait until they have an urgent need to focus on hiring. And that is one of the number one things that will steal your income, create frustration in your business, and create a slide back in your results. Because by the time that you actually are like, okay, I'm ready to hire this person, I need them right now, you're like 3 months too late.
Yeah.
Because by the time you go through recruiting, interviewing, hiring, the person giving notice, onboarding, training, and get to the place where the person can perform, that big surge that you're feeling and seeing in your business has now dissipated because you weren't able to capitalize on it because you didn't have the manpower to do so. So, I always say having a proactive recruiting plan in place is so, so important because by the time you need it, you're 3 months behind.
Yeah, I think that's valuable information. Okay, so I really want to dive into the topic at hand. However, can we backtrack a little? I'm curious to learn more about you. So how did you get to the point where you're like, I really love talking about this stuff and I'm excited? Like, what's your own personal business journey?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I started off doing business growth strategy and really focusing on the biggest hole that I saw in the market for entrepreneurs and business owners, which was teaching them how to generate leads and close clients. Everybody needs more clients. Everybody needs, more sales in their business. And so, my first 5 years in business, I was really, really focused on helping clients to get the right systems in place to grow. And of course, I'm still focused on that. But what I found is as people have begun to stay with me over a period of years, they run into the second biggest problem in their business, which is that they need a winning team. And, most people don't come into entrepreneurship having run, big teams or having managed a lot of people. And so I actually started putting a huge focus on these topics related to team building and leadership and hiring and recruiting for my own clients, to be perfectly honest, because I grow my own clients. So they come to me when they have a small baby business. And then throughout our time together, they grow it, to 6 figures and then multiple 6 figures and then 7 figures. And by the time you get to 7 figures, the most important part of what you're doing becomes your people, your people plan, developing and coaching people and all of that. So I really started focusing on this to help my own clients. But then I realized that in the market, there's not a lot of information and support for entrepreneurs around these things in general, which is why I then decided to write, the Bigger Than You book, really as just a resource to put out there for business owners like, hey guys, there's something out there for you that can help you with this. You don't have to struggle through this and make all the mistakes,
Well, and that's it. And I think a lot of people come to entrepreneurship and becoming a freelancer because they've had a horrible experience in a corporate 9-to-5 job. They're like, enough. I don't want to sit in a cubicle farm any longer in a soul-sucking job where I move this pile of paper over to this side of the desk, right? And so they come to it knowing, okay, I don't want that. But then sometimes they don't know what they actually want as well. So once they've grown and they've got traction, they understand who their client is, and there is a market for what they're offering, then it's like the growing the team, the people, the machine behind you. Because at the end of the day, you just can't do it all. Like, it's not even possible. So
it's not even possible. And it's not even something that is admirable to attempt, right? Because you can't serve at the highest level and you can't do what you are put here to do if you're doing all the things that an admin and an operations person and an accounts receivable person and a salesperson should be doing, right? You're meant to do the work. And you can't do the work if most of your time is dedicated to behind the scenes things that no one ever sees, feels, or experiences.
Right, that's it. So I'm curious then, Kelly, have you had a few fumbles along the way in hiring for your own team?
Yeah, of course. Of course. I mean, I always tell people when you go to open up a new position in your firm, you should expect that you will typically go through 3 to 4 candidates before you land on the perfect person that's going to be the long-term hire for your business. And I think that's really important. I share that message all the time because I come across so many business owners that are so incredibly frustrated and overwhelmed by building a team and they say, it's been such a waste of time and energy and money. And, I don't want to spend my resources there. And then I'll dig into it and I'll say, okay, how many people have you brought on and what was your training process like? And, what support did you give them and all of that? And very quickly, what I find is that, A, they didn't understand how to recruit and hire and onboard someone effectively, but B, they just haven't had enough experience to get good at it yet. And even now, even though I've been doing recruiting and hiring, even since my corporate career when I was 21 years old, I still make hiring mistakes. And it still sometimes takes me one or two people before I find the right person for a role. And that is something that the sooner as a business owner you get your arms and your head around that process, you don't have this like emotional knee-jerk reaction to it. You understand it's part of the learning curve, especially with a new role. And it's helping you to refine and define who you need and what that needs to look like versus, who's not going to be a fit.
And that's it. I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, it's a learning process all along the way. And you learn the most sometimes when you fumble the most, right?
Exactly. So true.
Yeah.
So true.
So you talk about an unstoppable dream team. How would you define that for yourself?
Yeah. And I feel very blessed and very lucky to consider myself to have an unstoppable dream team. And so, they show up early, they stay late, they do things without being asked, they're passionate, they go above and beyond, they're always learning, they're always stretching themselves, they're always pushing themselves to grow. They understand our mission and our vision. They understand our financial goals and they contribute to them. They all understand that, in my company and in my methodology that I teach, there's the 4X factor where they have to bring in at least 4 times what they cost in new revenue every single month. They get it. They know their numbers. They understand that if they're not making a contribution, we can't keep hiring and growing, right? Because if we're spending all of our profit just to pay to stay where we are with the people we already have, obviously we're not going to keep growing. So to me, that's, what a dream team looks like and feels like. And I think the big thing I think people get hung up on quite a bit when hiring is the skills and the experience. When at the end of the day, it's not the skills or the experience that are going to be what makes or breaks your team. Because if you're passionate and you're committed, you can get whatever training needs to be gotten for your team. But if the heart and the DNA and the work ethic isn't there, then none of that can be made up for.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And, I appreciate in your book, you were talking about like employees can't make money for you unless you create a job description and tasks that bring in revenue. So they've got to be part of that equation right from the get-go. Just thought, drop the mic, Kelly. Like, it's true.
Yeah. And the reason why I spend so much time talking about that in the book is because from my own experience of coaching my own clients, that is like an afterthought, maybe. Like it's like maybe an afterthought when things aren't going well. But what I'm saying is like when you're constructing the job description, you have to be setting an employee up for success to be able to contribute and to be able to make a difference. And you have to build into where their time and energy is being spent and the tasks that you're having them to do. Where are those dollars coming from and how? And what does that look like? And if you don't have that foresight, why would you expect a new employee to be thinking that way, right?
Yeah. So your graphic designer, your copywriter, your person that handles social media, your blogger, even your assistant, like how are they generating revenue? I think that's really key.
Yeah, that's it. And, a lot of what we work on in my Legacy Leaders Mastermind, and in fact, we're going to be doing this in our February session. We have an in-person intensive for 2 days. We are literally taking every role in each person's company and going through how that role needs to be monetized in 2019. Because, if it's a salesperson or a marketing person, it's pretty obvious, right?
Yeah.
But where people struggle is maybe in the accounting and finance role, or, maybe in the customer service role or the operations person. But what's so interesting is a lot of times the roles that seem where it's like the most counterintuitive, for example, one of the ones that, I know just about everyone who starts a business, one of the first positions that they hire is going to be a tactical admin or an operations person that's probably doing their scheduling with clients and dealing with, customer support issues. Well, hello, they should be your best salesperson in the company because they should be getting the most referrals, the most upsells, the most reactivations, right? They're the people having the highest level of soft interaction with your own clients. And yet, most people don't have anywhere in their contract with their operations or their admin or customer service person what their requirements are for generating new leads and closing clients each month. And yet they actually have the easiest job of anyone when it comes to doing so.
Right, because they're the gatekeeper. They're the first point of contact that give that warm and fuzzy. You know, it makes me think, back to your book, just that point alone as well, what changes do business owners really need to make, either in their mindset or otherwise, to get there as a leader? I mean, because you can't just magically right, I just want a dream team, go. You also have to do some shaping and changing as well.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think when people are first starting to build a team, you know, you just want to get things off your plate. You're like, please, for the love of God, can I just get a couple hours of sanity? Right? Like, it's what's that called? Maslow's
hierarchy of needs.
There's a hierarchy, right? Like the hierarchy is like at the beginning, you're like, please, can someone just get this stack of stuff off my desk? And I get it, and that's so natural, and that's like where everybody starts, right? But the mindset shift that has to take place is you have to move from, giving someone tactical to-dos to creating a value add role within the organization that is going to be an income producing role. And you have to start looking at your employees as investments that should bring a return instead of tactical taskmasters that just get stuff done. Because what happens is then you build a team of people that keep raising the number that you personally have to generate each month just to keep your business afloat and pay for them. And that's the worst situation you could possibly be in, where you actually wake up in the morning and you have to go earn new money and close new clients just to pay for your people, instead of your people doing that to pay for themselves and then to actually contribute to the profit of the company. Now, that is the mentality in corporate America, right? So I came from Fortune 500. So it's natural that I always have thought that way, because you would never be allowed to have a person on our team that wasn't, producing profits. But for business owners, a lot of people that didn't come from a high production environment like that, that's a totally new concept. You may not have worked in a role where production responsibilities were key for you. And so it's just important to make that change first, because you can't expect the people that you hire to have that mentality if you don't bring that, beginning with the interview process.
Yeah, and I think that that's key. Like, you start from day one in that mentality as a business, because let's say you've hired somebody on, and then 6 months later you're like, oh, and actually you have to be revenue generator. They're like, what? I didn't know that was part of my job. I'm not doing that, and it's downhill fast from there.
And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's literally exactly what happens. That is literally exactly what happens. And then, everybody's in a panic because now the employee quits, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I took a good thing and messed it up. They were doing so good at all of their administrative things, and now I want them to, actually cover their headcount, and now they quit, and now I have nothing. Well, that it's not their fault that they had a negative reaction that 3 months in, you're like, oh, and by the way, you're going to be a salesperson too. And they're like, what? I didn't come here to sell anything. No way, I'm out. Right. So you just have to be really careful with that stuff and just have that foresight.
Yeah. Brilliant. So it made me smile so big when I was reading your book, and you talked about the role of simplifying in all of this. So talk to me a little bit about simplifying when it comes to building a team.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're on the show, right? And, I focus so much on that in the book, because that is where business owners really fall off the wagon in building a team. We talked already about how in the beginning it's all up in your head, and you need to take that time to get your systems documented and get it down on paper so that people actually can help you. And I see the number one role and the number one attribute of a good leader to be someone who can take something that is complex and simplify it down to the point where almost anyone could be successful doing it. And what I find in a lot of small businesses is the processes are so complex. It's such a tangled web. It's such a disorganized, fractured process for doing things that, yes, it is very difficult to find the right person for the job because almost no one could come in and be successful doing it.
Yeah.
And the thing that we have to remember, my brother's an engineer on nuclear power plants. Like, that's complex, right? Like, that's complex. Like, no one can step in and do that. For us as online marketers running businesses, the vast majority of our jobs are not nuclear scientists working on power plants. They are things that we can simplify down into step-by-step processes, and just about anyone can come in and do if you, the leader, set it up the right way. So I always, tell people, remember the McDonald's approach, right? They became one of the most successful operations in the world because they have it down to a science, the number of seconds each thing should take, how many staff they need, what the process is going to look like. It's the same system across the board, and it's easy. And anyone can do it. And you want to build your business the same way. Otherwise, what you're going to do is you're going to end up overpaying for each of the roles in your company by a significant margin. And you're also going to have a lot of downtime where your business slips backwards, that you have open seats because you can't find the unicorn that can figure out your craziness and step in and actually help you.
Right.
So I think those are two really big things to remember there.
So I think that dovetails nicely into the 6 pillars that you talk about. So the 6 pillars of effective leadership that really help you build an unstoppable team. So let me just go through those really fast, make sure I've got them right. So the pillars are this: training, teaching, coaching, mentorship, structure, and accountability. Did I get that right? Good. So since we have limited time, and maybe we could bring you back for a part 2 later down the line, but let's zoom in on a couple of those. So first and foremost, what's the difference between coaching and mentoring and teaching in your mind? Somebody's saying, well, that all sounds the same.
Well, and that's the problem. We lump it all into one, and then we wonder why there's like the tablecloth is only covering one corner of the table, right?
Right.
So think about it from this standpoint. So teaching is where you learn something new. So if I'm going to teach you something, I'm going to walk you through the hows, the whats, the ins, the outs, the ABCs, and the XYZs of a new topic that you don't know anything about.
Yes.
So I'm going to teach you that subject, right? And then the coaching is where I'm going to actually watch you do that thing, listen to you do that thing, role play with you doing that thing, and I'm going to give you feedback on how you can improve the effectiveness of how you're doing that thing that I just taught you.
Yes.
Right? So the teaching is like introduction. The coaching is in the middle where you're working on outcomes and performance improvement and effectiveness.
Yep.
Right? And then the mentoring is the life-changing relationship in which you go really deep in understanding the person's mission, vision, and goals as a human and as a person that spans beyond the goals of your company or your personal agenda, where you bring out the best of them, you give them the best of you, and you partner together to achieve the outcomes that matter most to each of you as an individual. So, and we could go through each of the 6 pillars, and they're each so different and so unique and so important. And maybe that's a part 2 conversation because it's a little bit of a deeper conversation. But hopefully that gave you the contrast for you guys to see and hear that each of these things are so different and they are so important and they produce a very different outcome.
Well, and I think even before you get down the path, you've hired somebody. I mean, really, the first step is writing that detailed job description, right?
Yes.
Do you have any pointers there? Simplify that down.
Yeah, I mean, I would say you being clear on the outcomes that you want this person to achieve and not just the tactical to-dos that you're going to put on their plate. And that's the biggest mistake, once again, that I see with job descriptions. It's a list of 25 tactical to-dos. Well, now you have a taskmaster that doesn't understand the bigger picture of why or what or how or what the impact is. And so you're putting them in this very limited box in terms of understanding, which then translates into the impact of the work that they're doing. So you have to first understand the why and what the outcomes are and be able to clarify that. Then you can talk about the tactical tasks that they're going to be doing to support those things.
And I like to describe it as if you are building a house. So you have to lay the foundation first. You don't buy the curtains for a new build house until, the house has been built. So when it comes to the foundational part, do you also coach your clients to kind of look and lean towards the company's vision and mission statement, their core values? What's the overarching quarterly goals that you're going after this year? That's all so important at the foundational level, right?
Yeah, it's so important. And that's where I was saying, you really have to stop relying so heavily on trying to hire people based on a skill set or experience. And you really have to focus on the underlying characteristics, because if you hire someone that has the skill set, and I see this all the time, I see business owners go out and try to hire these like high level experts for their company. And the person's not bought into the vision. They're not bought into the mission. They won't do it the way that that business owner believes is important to do it. And ultimately the relationship ends up being severed. Because if you don't lead with the values and the mission and really making sure that there's a character match, the skills and the experience aren't going to matter anyway.
Yeah, because it's going to be soulless. Like it's going to be hard to retain that person for a long term because you're not connecting with their why and they're not connecting with yours.
Exactly.
So I want to zoom in then on the 6 pillars. And this time I want to talk about 5 and 6. So structure and accountability. Can you go a little bit more into detail there?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, most business owners have like a huge aversion to giving structure to their employees and holding them accountable because they feel that will be a turnoff to them and it's very intimidating. And the opposite is actually true. People crave structure and people crave having an in-depth understanding of what's really important in the course of a day where thousands of things are being thrown at them all day, every day. So it's very counterintuitive, but it's important to understand that your employee's success really hinges on structure and accountability, and your company's success hinges on that as well. And so, think about it like this. I always describe it this way. Think about it, if you're going to go bowling for the very first time with a little kid, you're going to put some bumpers on the bowling lane, right? And so structure and accountability are putting bumpers on the bowling lane and almost setting up your employees so that they can't fail in their roles. That's how I think of it. It is advocacy for them. It is going to help them be successful, know what's important, and understand on a daily basis what you expect them to follow through on. It's not offensive. It's not micromanaging. It's not being negative. It's actually just the opposite.
I think it's defining the bullseye. I mean, what does success look like for us as the company? And for you as the team member. And if you don't know what you're going after, you're just going to be throwing darts in the dark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So when it comes to accountability, what does that look like for you? Is that weekly check-ins, monthly check-ins? What do you see as working?
For my team, it's daily, and it's a couple of times a day. So they submit their metrics at the end of each night to me. I review them. I go through them. I check in a couple of times throughout the day. We're a very high performance culture, and my expectations are maybe a little bit higher than what, everyone's are. I mean, it's really up to you. How fast do you want to grow and how aggressive do you want to be? If you want to see results on a daily basis, check in every day, right? If you want to see results on a weekly basis, maybe you're checking in once a week. But I've always found that daily check-ins really do support the best interest of both the employee and the company.
Which, again, I think builds, if it's done right, a thriving company culture as well, because it's you're giving people the breath to do the work on their own terms, but you're also giving them the support and feeling supported all along the way. Can you talk a little bit about how to build a thriving company culture? And this is really important. Like, some of us work with remote teams, virtual assistants across the other side of the planet. Like, how do you simplify that down?
Well, I would say caring about having a thriving company culture is really the first step to having a thriving company culture. If you care about what the value system and the belief system and the operating, system of how your company is run is, chances are that is going to start a snowball. But it's having principles. It's having boundaries. It's, communicating what's okay and what's not okay, both internally and externally from the people that are representing your brand. Mm-hmm. And if you create a great company culture, chances are your company is going to thrive because people are going to show up, they're going to invest their best, they're going to want to win. And if you don't have any reason for your employees to do any more than clocking in and clocking out. So culture seems like it's a soft thing to many people. They're like, oh, culture, that's corporate, or that's a soft skill. We need to make money. When in reality, culture is one of the biggest things that does drive profits and growth within a company.
Right. Because the buy-in's there, because people feel supported and, you're just genuine connection.
Exactly.
We run quarterly strategic retreats at the Simplifiers where we get off our own proverbial hamster wheel and come together, mind map, what's gone well this last quarter, where we focus next quarter, But that actual physical getting together is such a key component to it. After quarterly retreats, we may go down to the pub for a pint, or we may go get pedicures. I mean, it really doesn't matter. Like that time, that's critical. So if you do work with virtual assistants or remote teams, sometimes that's hard. You don't get face to face. So if at ever possible, try to get face to face with your team.
Absolutely.
As much as you possibly can.
Yeah, for sure.
How does that change, though, in your mind, if somebody is a contract employee versus an actual employee on your team, whether maybe it's a freelancer or somebody that you're delegating contract work? Do you still put a point on creating company culture with those guys as well?
Absolutely. I mean, hopefully you're growing your company and ultimately looking for people that are going to become internal employees. And hopefully you would still want a contractor to display the same values and the same attitude that you would expect your own employees to. I mean, of course, there's limitations as far as what you can and can't do, with someone being a contractor versus an employee. But I think it's really important to be thinking that way with every role in your company, because getting that role to the point where it can be a full-time position and where you can invest in that person to make them full-time, that's also a big part of company culture. It's also a big part of what's going to drive your growth rate within the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it comes back down to understanding their goals and understanding your goals, right? And having that conversation, I think, on a regular basis too, right? Because absolutely, people change. People, they evolve as time goes on. You've heard the statistic, I'm sure, where it's so much easier to hold on to a person than have to train and find a new person. How expensive it is for big corporate companies to do that. I'm curious, what is your thoughts on how to not only get a quality person for your team, but how to keep them? Like, what other elements are we forgetting to do to really keep a person on board?
Yeah. Well, I talk about this a lot in Bigger Than You. I would definitely recommend that everybody listening get a copy because it really is the best educational tool for going through this whole process. But weekly one-on-ones are so essential. And I think that, what I hear over and over again is that business owners and managers alike, really, the time that they do take with people, it's like 1,000 miles an hour talking about tactical to-dos and talking about comings and goings of the daily operations of the business. And that's not really what an employee one-on-one is. An employee one-on-one is really where you're taking time to assess their progress, their performance, their goals, your goals, how things are going, making sure that you're aligned both strategically as well as aligned from a mindset standpoint for growth. And I think that step gets missed very often. And it's, of course, because we're all busy and because it's very easy to get pulled into the urgent things in your business versus working on the important ones. But that's one of the big power levers for growth that any business owner can use to, get better results from their team right away.
Yeah. And, don't forget Socrates invented this a long time ago, or at least put a term to it. Sometimes what you just need is to go on a walk with an employee, just take a walk with them. Because sometimes all this stuff feels like, oh, this is big and scary. Oh, I have to have a very structured meeting and check-ins and all the things. Sometimes if you notice somebody who just needs a little bit more attention, go around the block, get out of the office for a 10-minute walk, and you might find new ways and new things of what's going on underneath to help course correct as you go.
Couldn't agree more.
So yes, I highly recommend you guys check out her book, and I'll put the link in the show notes for you guys. It's called Bigger Than You, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Building an Unstoppable Team. I read it recently. Incredible, really good stuff. So I highly recommend it. So Kelly, a couple of questions before we wrap up that I like to ask everybody. And thank you again for your time today. It's so great. I love having this podcast and finding people like you that are like, I know this thing. I'm so excited to talk about it. So thank you for sharing your passion and your wisdom here. So Kelly, maybe tell us what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or maybe even poking holes and challenging your belief system right now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I just started rereading Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson, and I read it before. And, I'm one of those people that, I'm always looking for that next step. I'm always looking for how to improve what is already working. I think so many times in business, we get caught up in focusing on fixing things that are broken instead of improving things that are already working.
Yeah.
For me, one of the things that is already working is our launches are performing well. Mm-hmm. We've done 6-figure launches. We just did another 6-figure launch, but we want to do our first $1 million launch later this year.
Brilliant.
So I am studying and I am reading and I am watching videos and I am listening to podcasts and I'm hiring outside experts. And, I'm just doing all the things to try and take what we've done so far and figure out how we can maximize it and replicate it. And, for those of you guys that are looking to grow like group programs or, really work on your sales strategy for one-to-many, I think it's a great book with a lot of thought-provoking things in it about what the psychology of what makes people buy really looks like.
Brilliant. So we'll put the link in the show notes for people to check that out. Is there maybe one good app or tool that you're using right now in your day-to-day life that's helping you simplify?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like the simple of the simple. Like I use Google Drive for pretty much everything, and I use it because it's so simple. Yeah. I don't like a lot of complicated back and forth and this, that, and the other. I like whatever is the most efficient, simple thing that me and my team can use to get the work done and create the least back and forth. That's what I want to use. And so I'm a Google Drive girl all the way.
Yeah, ditto, because then you can be in a document live with other people on your team and making live changes. It's brilliant. Also, it's all app form as well, so you can get it on the go. So tell us, who's one person in your circle of colleagues or friends that you just know is doing amazing work out there in the world that we should interview on the Simplifiers podcast, and why?
Yeah, well, I know Anna, who is a client of mine, referred me here. I also have a coach, Allie Brown, and she is amazing. And she is like completely in her own category in so many ways. And I think she's really doing amazing things for, individuals that want to think differently and want to, kind of turn industry norms on their head and approach things from a different mindset and perspective than everyone else in their space. So I would say definitely check Allie Brown out.
Excellent. Gratitude, in my opinion, and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what's one thing you're grateful for right now in your life?
Yeah, health. I would say just as an entrepreneur, I just got done a launch and, I was thinking to myself over the weekend, like, wow, like having the stamina as entrepreneurs to do what we do every day is a lot.
It is.
And I can't imagine doing it with my health being compromised. And I think when you are healthy, a lot of times you don't take enough time to reflect on the power of that. So right now I'm like super in tune with being very thankful for being healthy.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, if your physical body is not there, if you're not sleeping well, if you're not drinking enough water, there's no way to do all the other things that are out there. All the
things that we do, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So just a reminder, everybody, check out her book, Bigger Than You. You can find her online at kellyroachcoaching.com. Where do you hang out the most online?
Well, I'm usually in the Tribe of Unstoppable. So that's my private Facebook group.
Okay, great.
We do live trainings there and we're hanging out. We're answering people's questions about business growth. So that's a great place to connect.
Perfect. So I'll put the link down in our show notes for all of your social media and for your private Facebook group. And just a reminder to everybody as well, if you're listening and you're in the Southern California area, she's got a one-day in-person event coming up on February 9th, 2019 called The Game Changer. So there are a couple couple of seats left, I've heard. So you can go to 2019gamechanger.com to grab your spot. These are the times where I wish I had a teleporter to be going from the UK to California.
Yes.
I would gladly go to California in the month of February. Let's just be
Right?
real.
And that's why we planned it. I'm like, I need to get the heck out of here with the ice and snow all over the place.
So Kelly, again, thank you so much for your time today. I'd like to close on this one final question. So somebody somewhere out in the world has been listening to this podcast, laughing and smiling all alongside us, and she's thinking about hiring her first person, building the team bigger than her, and it's big and it's a bit scary. What is one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her on her path?
Yeah, it's the fact that if you even have an inkling in your heart or in your soul or in your gut or in your mind that you want to do something bigger than you, that you were put on the planet to do that. So it wouldn't even be there unless it was meant to be. So just take action.
Just do the thing. Thank you, Kelly, so much.
Thank you so much.
Take care.